We're going to start from this third line on Chabez Mabez, Chazer, just the Baisa, what it's saying, and then we'll see the end of the Gemara a little bit to the Mishnah, and then we'll have a Chazar. So the Mishnah said, this Baisa, you have these twin beams. This one does not have enough width to be able to hold a half brick, which is 1.5 tvachim. And this one also does not have enough to accept and to hold a half brick, which is 1.5 tvachim. The halacha is like this: if both of the beams are able to hold the width of an ariach, a half brick, which is 1.5 tvachim, which means that both kairos together are a tefach. That's how you read it. Which means both kairos are a tefach. Ein tzarich lavi kara cheres. Then you do not need to bring another beam. Then lav, and if not, tzarich lavi kara cheres, you need to bring another beam. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Aimer, he is more lenient. He says, Im mekablos ariach la'arkoi shleisha tvachim. If over here mekablos is more about its strength. If it has the strength to hold the length of a half brick, and the length of a half brick is shleisha tvachim. When it says shleisha tvachim, it's going on the brick. And therefore, you could move the beams as much as you want. They don't have to be side by side. You can move it and play around with them. As long as they're strong enough to hold a brick 3 tvachim on those spread apart, and you can hold this width. Ain't tzarich lavi karacheres, you don't need to bring another beam. If it's not so strong, tzarich lavi karacheres, you need to bring another beam. Okay, here's the case where the raya came from. Hayu achas lamala va'achas lamata. They're side by side with each other, but one's up and one's down. One's up and one's down. Rabbi Yehuda says, Royin ha'yoyno, you look at the top one, ki'iluhi lamata, as if it's low. Ves hatachtein, and the low one, ki'iluhi lamala, as if it's up. You could pretend like a chavay rami, you could bring them down till they meet each other, and as if the beams are side by side. Uvovad, and only if shaleitehei el yoyno lamala me'asim amra, as long as the top one is not above 20 amas, which is way too high. V'hatachtoin lamata me'asar, and the bottom one is below 10 tvachim. So that's the brisa. Here comes the kasha with the raya, says the Gemara. What comes out is like this: zev zev. If both beams are within 20 amas, even if they're far apart from each other, amrina, we say chavay rami, that we lower it and place it as if they're next to each other. Afagav deles be'tefach, even though you don't have a tefach, because the case was where these kairos were not a tefach each. And we see that you can pretend and say it lowers it down, even though they're very far apart from each other. So Amar Lei, Rav Ashi said back to Avgana, no, you read the brisa wrong. Tritz, answer v'hem alchi, and say this. It's one case. Sorry, it's two cases. Uvovad, this is how you read the uvovad. Uvovad shleitei el yenu lamala me'esrim, as long as the top one is not above 20 amas, ela b'seich esrim, but rather it's within 20 amas. And this is what you have to read into the brisa. V'hatachtein smuchala, but the bottom one is right next to it, pretty close by. B'pachas mishleisha, just less than 3 tvachim. And therefore, when he said royin, it meant through lavid. Through lavid, being within 3 tvachim, that's why it works. Not chavei rami, where they're way far apart. No, not that. It's working through lavid. Inami, or also, this was the other case the brisa referred to, bovad, as long as that the bottom one is not lower than 10 tvachim. Rather, it's above 10 tvachim. But where's the Al-Yana? The Al-Yana is smuchala. The Al-Yana is right next to it. B'pachas mishleisha, within 3 tvachim. So you have lavid. Aval shleisha, if they would be more than 3 tvachim apart, kivan deles be'tefach, since the beams are not a tefach wide, lo yamrin chavayt rami, we do not say chavayt rami. So therefore, you do not have a raya from this brisa. We were not referring to the very long, with a massive gap, and you're using chavay rami. That's not the brisa is talking about. The brisa is referring to using lavid, and they're both within 3 tvachim of each other. It's just not below 10 tvachim and not higher up than 20 amas, or else it wouldn't serve as a proper beam to allow you to carry in a mavli. Just a chazer, the Gemara, just outside what we just did. We had a Mishnah that told us, Sukkah hameduvlelas a case called the sukkah meduvlelas. What did that mean? So Rav told us, it's just a fancy word. The point is, it means a sukkah that has very little schach, and it's all one case. It has so little schach, and its sale, though, is more than its sunlight, and the sukkah is kosher. It was all one case, the Mishnah, an easy case, and that ended very quick. Just all you need is more shade than sunlight. Shmuel's where everything got into action. Shmuel said, no, sukkah meduvlelas is its own case. There also is a case in the Mishnah called more shade than sun. That's another case. But there's something called sukkah meduvlelas. What is that? Kana oila, kana yared. Kana oila, kana yared. One beam up, one beam down. And comes out of Chiddush in the Mishnah that such a sukkah is kosher. It's kosher. And the Gemara said from Abaya, the only reason why it's kosher is because you have loved. If they're within 3 tvachim, one up, one down, one up, one down, we look at it like the whole thing is closed, and with loved, you have a good sukkah. Don't get carried away. There's nothing fancy here. Rava said, no. Rava said, even if it's higher than 3 tvachim, even if it's higher, we have this thing called chavay rami, which is also Lach Meshim Sinai. It could be way higher up. And you could look as if it's all brought down, as if they're all lying side by side with each other. All side by side, but only if it's a tefach. If every kaira in that sukkah is a tefach, then we can lower it, because a tefach is already something chashuv, and you can lower it. And he brought a raya. His raya was from the story of the oil with the tumah, that whole mission always. And when Rav Kahana said over this raya from Rava, Rav Ashi said, that doesn't make any sense. Rav Ashi says, you're telling me anytime you don't have a tefach, you don't say chavay rami? I had this whole long brisa about Erevin, where you do say, even where you don't have a tefach. And Rav Kahana said back to him, no, you learned it wrong. It's not talking about chavay rami, it's talking about loved. And if you don't have a tefach, you do not say chavay rami. And that's how the Gemara ends. Okay, moving on to the 2 dots. New thing now. So the Gemara quotes the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, V'shetzilasa meruba mechamasa. If there's more shade than sun, kshera. The sukkah is kosher. Let's just look back at the Mishnah for a second. The Mishnah had, again, the 2 parts. Sukkah hameduvleles, v'shetzilasa meruba mechamasa. According to Rav, it's all one case. How much schach does a sukkah need? So the Mishnah starts off. You have this poor sukkah, has very little schach. As long as the sail is more than the sun, kshera. That's how he learns the Mishnah, according to Rav. Shmuel learned the 2 cases, but the point is they don't argue about the second one. Even Shmuel agrees that's the case. He just thinks sukkah meduvlelas is its own case. But everyone agrees there's a case in the Mishnah that says, as long as there's more shade than sun, the sukkah is kosher. Okay? Now the Gemara is on those words. Says the Gemara makes a diak, an inference. The Gemara makes a diak. Pashat. The Mishnah says only if there's more shade than sun is the sukkah kosher. What comes out is, ki hadadi, if the schach and the sun are equal, ki hadadi means equal, psula, the sukkah is pasul. Right? Obvious diak. If you need more shade than sun, so you're telling me basically if they're exactly equal, 50-50, the sukkah is pasul. Okay, well, it's not so crazy. Yeah, maybe. In fact, the Gemara, and I'm sure everyone who learned sukkah in the past, we didn't. So I didn't mention this question, but it's probably nagging at people that have learned sukkah in the past. V'hotznan, we have a Mishnah, B'idach Pirkin, in the other parak. The first parak, the first Mishnah in sukkah. That says, V'shechamasa meruba mitzilasa psula. There the Mishnah is talking about what sukkahs are pasul. And the Mishnah said, if the sun is more than the shade, psula, it's pasul. Okay, what's the kasha? The kasha is, make the obvious diak. What comes out is, ki hadadi, if they're equal, kshera, it's kosher. We have a stira between the Mishnah in the first parak and the Mishnah over here in our parak. What is the halacha if it's exactly 50-50, the shade and the sun? From our Mishnah, it's mashma, you have to have a little bit more than 50-50. Has to be 51-49, whatever. Has to be a drop more. A drop more. While the Mishnah, the first parak is mashma, that as long as they're equal, it's going to be fine. It's kosher. It just can't be more sun than shade, but the equal, they're kosher. If anyone's bothered by this question, you're in good hands, because this was nagging. And you know, if you learned the first Mishnah, it's boom. A lot of people ask, what's the Mishnah adding in? We already know this from the first one. That's not the Gemara's kasha.
Right, and it's funny because that's what people. I'm saying.
Right.
If you're not thinking
Right.
the inference, you just think like it's double.
Right. Shmuel David's saying most people asked it right away. They said,
what Rashi asked.
we already learned this in the first Mishnah.
That's what Rashi asked.
Right. But the Gemara is trying to show you that it's much big. It's not what we learned in the first Mishnah. It's actually a stira. Because there it's mashma 50-50 is okay, while our Mishnah's mashma 50-50 is no good. So what's the answer? He says the Gemara, loy kasha. It's not a kasha. It's not a problem. Kan milmala, kan milmata. The first word kan is here by us. I would put the word here by this kan. Even though usually kan and kan mean here and here, this first kan is us in the second parak. Milmala is above. I'll tell you what that means in a second. Kan means over there. The first parak is milmata. What does that mean? Over here in our parak, we're talking about when you look at the top of the schach. A guy looks on top and he sees, wow. Okay, let me see over here. There's more shade than sun. Then you need to have taka more shade than sun when you're looking at top. Why? Because the way it works with sunlight is it goes through a crack and then it expands on the floor. It expands, right? A small hole of sunlight is much greater on the floor. So our Mishnah was talking about checking on top. Is more shade than sun? Great. That means even if I look at the floor and it isn't like that, as long as the top is like that, then I know we're good because it's probably equal on the floor. If it's more here, then it's equal on the floor and equals good. Equals fine. The mission, the first parak was momata. They're looking at the floor. Oh, the floor, there's more sun than shade. That's fine. Why? Because that tells me that up above, if there's more sun than shade, that's no good. That's no good. I need more shade than sun because it's a way of showing what's going on top. I think we have a picture for this also. Let me just see if there's a picture. Is there a picture? Yes. Take a look. On page Lamed Beis, picture Lamed Zayin. So in picture Lamed Zayin is our parak. Kalmamal is our parak. By our parak, you take a look, they tell you in the caption on the top, in the picture itself, it's exactly equal, the amount of beams, the amount of space. Take a look at the floor. The floor has a lot more sun than shade. That's okay. As long as the top is equal, the bottom has more sun, doesn't bother us. Take a look at picture Lamed Ches. There, the kanim, the beams, are wider. The width of the beams are greater than the space between the beams. And look at the floor. They're equal. They're totally equal on the bottom. So it depends how you look at the sukkah.
They're both the same amount.
What?
I'm saying that has a width of a certain thing on the bottom, but has a width of a certain thing. The other one is a little bit more on top of the other, and then just gets wider on the bottom. They're both opening up once they hit the bottom.
Right. But the question is, we want it to be at least equal. So the way it's equal is by seeing what's going to be on top. It means you need more, you need to have on some level more tzeil. So if you're measuring on top, which is the Mishnah over there can't be more sun than shade. So then that's a problem.
It can't even be equal on top.
What?
It can't even be equal on top, because equal on top means in the bottom there's more sun.
Okay, so I think what you'd see and Shmuel David are pointing out, which is a big problem. I wanted to bring this up. I want to first explain it. What's not clear, and this taka seems to be a problem in Rashi, and people are dealing with it. What do we look at? Is the importance the top, or is the important thing the bottom? What's our focus? We look at what's more shade than sun. Where do I look? Guy comes to me, comes to a Rav and says, "Is my sukkah more shade than sun?" Where am I going to look? On top or on bottom? It's not so clear. It's not so clear where you're supposed to look at. Where it's kreveya, where
The thing is funny. The point is that in the sukkah there's more tzeil. Who cares if the top of it?
Some people hold that the mashmois is also the top is important.
That's what Mara seems to say.
Yeah.
Well, who cares?
Because that's whatever happens afterwards is the main thing is how you made it. The main thing is how you made it.
Not more shade.
What?
I'm not following how this answer is steer in the deal.
Okay.
From looking up to be able to see the stars, you have to see through it.
What did you say?
Saying why sometimes you can see that when you're trying to look up to see the kavanim, right? So that's where you see that. Oh, it makes a difference on top.
On top.
See where it makes a stop is when it could theoretically make a difference.
Why do you need more shade than sun? Let's go into that.
Because in order to have a shem schach, that's considered a cover over your sukkah, and that's the ikr thing of the sukkah, it has to have a certain amount of shade, amount of shelter. And the way you define that is by more shade than sun. So just to reiterate the teretz again, just to explain, because it makes it problematic when you explain it too well, because it's going to run into this problem. Okay? The point is, it's not a contradiction. Our parak is mashma that 50-50 is no good, and that parak is mashma 50-50 is good. So the way the Mishnayos are talking is about where you're looking first. So in our parak, we're looking at the top, and we're saying there's more shade than sun. So what ends up being is that on the floor it could be 50-50. That's okay. That's a way, by saying there's more shade than sun, brings me down to 50-50 below, and that's okay to me. 50-50 is fine. 50-50 is fine. And my way of saying those words are because I'm looking at the top to show me what's below. But 50-50 is okay. While the first Mishnah, the first parak, is talking about a guy comes in and he looks at the bottom, and by the bottom there's more sun than shade. That's a problem. If there's more sun than shade, then there's not going to be enough shade above. But if they're equal, that's okay, because I know there's more shade on top now. It means if I look at the floor and 50-50 on the floor, then for sure, because sun expands, so for sure on top, there's going to be more shade than sun. It sounds a little bit confusing. I also have to chaz this over a few times in my brain. One more time. In our parak, the guy's coming in, he's looking at the top. At the top, all we have to see is there's more shade than sun. Good. 50-50 is no good. It's just a way of basing it on the top, because below it is going to expand and get more. While the Mishnah over there was looking at the bottom, there's more sun than shade, that's a problem. But if it's equal, it's okay, because that means up above, there's more shade than sun.
How are you ever running it out that if it's equal, it's possible? Like in our parak.
What we're coming at is, if it's as long as it's technically a 50-50 thing, it's okay.
So how do you read it?
Because it's a way of saying that at some point in the sukkah there's more tzel than chama. It means you need more tzel than chama, but not practically to get more shade, because at the end of the day, you might have more sun than shade. But on some level, it's the higher amount of shade that makes it happen. That's 50-50.
No matter everyone's massing that 50-50 is always kosher.
Yeah, it just depends where you're coming from. Depends where you're starting.
Yeah, that'd be psula.
It just depends your starting point. If a guy's looking at the floor and he sees they're equal, that's going to be good, because that means there's more shade on top. But if you're starting on top and there's 50-50, then you're in trouble, because that means there's going to be too much sun below. So it depends just where you start from. When the guy walks in the sukkah, where he looks first. That's all that matters. So if you call a Rav down to your sukkah, he comes to look, he could look at two things. He could look at the top, and if he sees there's more shade than sun, we're good to go. I don't have to look at the floor. But if he comes into your sukkah and he sees, there's more sun than shade, that's a problem. I know over here it's not going to be good. But if it's equal on the bottom, if he sees the equal bottom, I know there's more shade than sun, because sun expands. But if it's more sun than shade, for sure it's too much space up there. Okay? Amar Rav Papa said, Rav Papa, a phrase. He says a phrase. I asked somebody today, why do you have these things in Gemaras where the guy says, it's like a phrase that people say. What do you need that for? Just another, what's the point of that? But let's see what he says before I answer. Hainu da amenshi. This is a common saying that people would make. Kizuza mila'el, ki'isra milatachas. A zuz is a coin. Like a small coin mila'el above is like an isra, which is a bigger coin below. It means you have a small opening of sun above, it's going to be much wider on the bottom. That's just the way that sun works. So you just bring out that point. This is what you see from our sugya, that whatever you see on top expands below. And that's why the two Mishnayos depends where you're coming from to decide if you have more shade than sun. Why do we do these phrases? Sometimes there are extra things to learn out, but I guess sometimes it's to bring out the idea of it, explain like a mushal that can really make people understand this concept. What do you mean there's more? Oh, right, like they say this phrase and it's a common thing that helps, I guess, the understanding of the Gemara. Let's just do one last Gemara because it's not a very, very easy Gemara. The next case of the Mishnah was, looking back at the Mishnah, Hama'uba Kimin Bias. A guy made his schach thick, Hama'uba thick, Kimin Bias like a type of house. And we actually had a picture of it. If you want to look at the picture again, it was a very, it's on page Lamed. picture Chaf. Page Lamed, picture Chaf. And you see the sukkah, the guy mamish, he owns a schach business, I guess, and he just laid it on thick. Okay? So it looks like a major house. The Mishnah said, even though you can't see the stars, they're not visible from within it, ksheira, it's kosher. It's fine. Okay? Even though it's a very thick schach. Says the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan is a brisa, the Rabbanan taught. Tanu Rabbanan means the Rabbanan taught. A brisa that elaborates on the Mishnah, or says more information. Hama'ubikim in bayis, a guy made his schach thick, like a type of house. Alpha pishin akachavim near mitecha, even though the stars are not visible within it, ksheira, it's kosher. Okay, that's mamish our Mishnah. But the brisa adds in like this. Ein koich v'chama near mitecha. Let's say the koich v'chama are not near mitecha. You don't see within it. What's the koich v'chama? Koich v'chama means the rays of sunlight. There are no rays of sunlight visible in the sukkah. That is a machlokes. Beishamai peisim. Beishamai say no good. This is not a good sukkah. And the reason why it's not a good sukkah, because it's not compared to sukkah at all. You don't have a ray of sunlight. That's a roof. That is not a schach. It's not a sukkah. It's not a sukkah. Ubeis Hillel machshir, but Beis Hillel says kosher. It's fine. It's fine. It's kosher. It's not great. A lot of people learn halacha. It's not lechatchila, but if you did it, it's okay. It's kosher. Always when you look at a Mishnah, you look at how the Mishnah said it. Sometimes we'll say halacha like this, like this and this, kosher something. But sometimes it says like if a guy did it, I'm a ubekim in bias. If someone did this, ksheira. It means it's not great, but if you did it, it's kosher. So that's also like a rule. Depends how the Mishnah said it over. So here also, it's not great, but still machshir it, but it's not the best type of sukkah. So Al-Gapon, if you lay it in thick, if you don't see the stars, that's fine. But if you can't see the sun, the rays of the sun, not the sun, the rays of the sun, Beishamai says it's pasul, it's not a schach, this is like a roof. While Beis Hillel says it is kosher. Mazel tov, we just got to the Mishnah, we'll end here.
Shad.